Okay, in this lesson, we're going to discuss adding integers. Okay, that may sound easy, but it might get a little confusing. But if you follow a few simple rules, it'll make a lot more sense. Okay, so some of the basic things might look like this. So let's take a look at two integers. We add 2 plus 5. We know that's equal to 7. Okay, if we take a look at the number line, I'm going to draw this out. Okay, so if we start with 2, and then we add 5, okay? So start with 2, we go 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We now land at 7, okay? And therefore 2 plus 5 is equal to 7. Now let's throw in a couple negative numbers. Actually, let's keep it simple. Let's say we're going to do 8 minus 3, okay? We all know that that is equal to 5. But if we do this on a number line, I'm going to draw this out again. Okay, 8 minus 3, we're going to start with 8. I'm going to put a dot there. Okay, now we're going to subtract 3 or go to the left 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. And we land at 5. So we know that 8 minus 3 equals 5. Okay, now we're going to add a little variation. Okay, what do I mean by that? Let's say 4 minus 6. What does that equal to? Let's use the number line. Okay. So now we're going to start at 4, and we're going to subtract 6. Okay. Subtracting 6 means you're going to the left, and we're going to go 6 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We land at negative 2. So the answer to 4 minus 6 is negative 2. Okay. Now, note that 4 minus 6 can also be written as 4 plus negative 6, and that is still equal to negative 2. Okay? Whenever you encounter a negative sign, what you do in the number line is the same thing. So, in other words, on this number line, we start at 4. Okay? When you add a negative number and you see the negative number, it tells you to go to the left. So you're going to go to the left 6 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So that answer is still negative 2. So let's add another variation. Let's say you've got negative 3 plus 5. What does that equal to? I'm going to use the number line again. I'm going to start at negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're going to start at 3. I'm sorry, we're going to start at negative 3. And we're adding 5. So we're going to go to the right 5 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we get an answer of 2. Okay? Now, let's add yet a fourth variation. Let's say we've got -1, and we're going to subtract 3. What does that equal to? Well, we're going to use the number line again. I'm going to go with -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1. Okay, so we start with -1. That's right here. So -3, right, tells me we're going to go to the left. So we're going to start at -1 and jump to the left 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And we land at -4. So then the answer is -4. Okay? Again, if we rewrite this, this is the same as -1 plus -3. And that is still equal to -4. Okay? So no matter how you rewrite it, it's still the same. So let's look at another example. Let's say we've got 3 terms now. Okay? -2 plus -3 plus 8. What does that equal to? Well, let's take a look at the number line. Okay, so we're going to start at -2. We're adding a -3. We see a negative, so we got to go to the left 3 spaces. So that's 1, 2, 3. Okay, but we also need to add 8. And since we're adding a positive number, we need to go to the right 8 spaces. So now we go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we land at 3. And the answer then is 3. So up until this point, we've been using the number line to help you to understand adding and subtracting positive and negative integers, okay? But what if the numbers are so big that using the number line is prohibitive, meaning it doesn't really make sense to use a number line? Let's take a look at this pattern here. We see from the first step that when we take -2, and we start at -2 on the number line, okay, right here, and if you follow the green line and add -3, add a -3, we go to the left. We're going to go to the left, 1, 2, 3. We land at -5, okay? So we know that -2 plus -3 is equal to a -5, okay? In other words, -2 plus -3 is equal to -5. So what pattern do you see here? Isn't it interesting that when you have two negative numbers added together, it's the same as their positive numbers added together, but with a negative? So what I mean is, it's the same as 2 plus 3 equal to 5, okay? But with the negatives added, these are all negatives, okay? So let's take a look at an example. If we take a -8, sorry, a -8, and add a -9, that is the same thing as 8 plus 9, which is equal to 17. Negative, negative, negative. Okay? Well, what happens when you take the next step in the original problem? So now we've got negative 5, and we need to add 8. Okay? We know that the answer is 3, right? Because we solved that. But how do we know that without using the number line? Well, when you have a negative and a positive, what you can do is take the difference between 5 and 8 is 3, okay? If the larger number is a positive number, then your answer will be positive. However, if the larger number is a negative, then your answer is negative, okay? So let's flip the signs around. Let's say it's 5 plus negative 8, okay? We know that the difference between 5 and an 8 is also a 3, but because the negative is in front of the larger number, the answer has to be a negative 3. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. What happens when we have a negative 3 subtracting a 4? Okay, we're going to rewrite this and say that negative 3 is the same thing as adding a negative 4. Okay, so now we know that we can take both terms as positive and say 3 plus 4 is equal to 7, but because they're both negative, so the answer is now a negative. Okay, negative 7. Let's take a look at another example. What happens if you've got a negative 5 and you're going to subtract a negative 2? Okay, when this happens, when you have two negatives like this next to each other, you can now write it like this: negative 5 plus 2. Okay, two negatives together become a positive. Then now we take the difference, okay, the difference between, and we take a difference because we have a negative term, which is a negative 5, and we have a positive term, which is a positive 2. When you have a negative and a positive, we're going to take the difference, okay, and that difference is 3, and then ask yourself, which is the larger term and what is the sign in front of it? The larger term here is 5, and the sign in front of 5 is a negative. Therefore, the answer has to have a negative. Okay, so why does this work? Let's think of another example that you're familiar with. 6 minus 2, okay? Very easy, right? In your mind, you know that the answer is 4. However, we can rewrite this and say this is the same as 6 plus negative 2, right? 6 plus negative 2. It's the same thing as adding a negative. Now we have a positive term here and a negative term, which means we have to take the difference, which is what you did over here. Okay, you're taking the difference. So now we take the difference between 6 and 2, and we write the answer down, and then look at the larger term, which would be this, and ask yourself, what is the sign in front of the 6? It's a positive, and therefore the answer remains positive 4. Okay, so I shared with you a lot of examples. There are a lot of positives and negatives thrown around, and this can be very confusing. Okay, so I would recommend that you go back to the beginning of this and listen to it again. It's absolutely critical that you understand every single step that is shown here. If you do understand, that's great, because moving forward, you're going to work on more complex problems, and the negatives and the positives will not confuse you. However, if you miss the concept, it's going to get very confusing. So again, I would recommend reviewing this video again. Okay? All right. Thank you very much.